Good morning. This is Matt Landers with Genesee Connects. It's our Zoom session that we've been doing about 3 times a week, where we talk directly to agencies and departments within Genesee County on different services and informational pieces that we think that the citizens need to know and would like to know. Today we have Felipe Altamari with the Genesee County Planning Department. He's the Director of Planning for Genesee County. He is going to be talking about the census. I know it's not the most exciting topic, but it is a crucial topic.
What are you talking about?
Sorry, Felipe, it is. It's coming from an accountant myself, and I know about stuff that isn't exciting. But the census is crucial. It is crucial for funding that comes to our community. It's crucial for representation in Congress. So there's a whole wide variety of reasons why it's crucial for us to get this number correct. And during this pandemic, things have been interrupted a bit, and the procedures or processes are a little bit skewed or thrown in upheaval a little bit. And I thought it was important that we had Felipe on here to emphasize on 2 points. One, the importance of the census, and two, what has changed with the pandemic. So Felipe, take it away.
Sure. Yeah, so no, the census is a really important program. It's one of the most important programs that the federal government puts on. Actually, it's the largest non-military mobilization this country does. We do it every 10 years. That's basically a simple head count of every person living in the country in every household as of April 1st on every year that ends with a 0. So every 10 years. And as you mentioned, it's critical because not only does it determine the number of congressional seats that every state gets, the electoral college count for each state, which is key, obviously, for everything our democracy does. But also it helps to distribute the federal funding to the states based on population, so it's fair. And it's based on the population and on need. Yeah, we need to know how many people are everywhere as of April 1st. And everybody in Genesee County now has been mailed several reminders. And if you haven't responded to those, an actual paper form that you can respond. So there's really no excuse anymore. It's something that's mandated. You're required to do by federal law, just like you do jury duty or anything like that. You take a few minutes to fill it out, and it really makes a difference to our county and our state and our country. So there are many, you mentioned programs and things like that that are funneled from the federal government down to the local level. And so it really touches every family. We have like Medicare, Medicaid, student loans, SNAP, which is the food assistance for low-income families, housing vouchers such as Section 8. If you have federal housing loans, that's distributed through the census counts. Children health insurance, school lunch programs, Head Start, which is like pre-K assistance kind of thing. Energy assistance, adoption assistance, crime victim assistance. So you name it, there's just a ton of federal programs that the funding comes through via population. And then on top of that, a lot of infrastructure funding is also brought that way. So money for water lines, sewer lines, roads, bridges, homeland security kind of things. All those things come through. So New York State on average gets about $73 billion of this funding every year through the census numbers. And when you do the math per person, basically it's about $30,000 over a 10-year period that each person gets basically on a per person basis. So every person that gets miscounted or not counted or whatever, that's the impact to our community over a 10-year period. It's $30,000 per person. So you miss a household of 4 here and there. It's really starting to add up. One of the concerns that we have in our county is that our population has been declining, and we're likely to decline. We were about 60,000 people around there as of 2010. And we're projected to be around the 57,000 number So actually, like a loss of about 2,500 people. And if you do the math at 30,000, you're an accountant, that's up to $75 million over a 10-year period. Of course, it's not money that just goes to the government. It's money that goes to families too, directly through some of these programs. So we want to make sure that that economic impact doesn't come to pass, and we can mitigate that basically by counting every person, making sure that we are getting our fair share of funding. It's your tax dollars, everybody's tax dollars that are coming back to us. So, if we don't get that accurate count, then we're not going to get our fair amount of that funding. So that's really critical piece of information to get out there. A lot of people, may hesitate to answer the census because they have concerns about security. This is the first census that you can actually answer online. You can also respond by phone or by mailing in that form. Just be reassured that this is one of the most secure things that the federal government does. The Census Bureau cannot share your information for 72 years. That's called the 72-year rule. After that, it sort of becomes more of a genealogy sort of exercise for people. But the Census Bureau can't, through those 72 years, the Census Bureau cannot share your information, not even with the FBI, the CIA, ICE, anybody, you name it, it's really locked away so that you can identify the numbers back to a person. They have all these security measures to make sure that that data can't be pinpointed back to one person at all. It's basically aggregated together, and we get to know, how many people live in this area, whether it's a block or a city or, a town or the county. So, yeah, and then anybody who violates those laws, actually, there's some very strong penalties and jail time, monetary and jail time associated with violating that. So be reassured that your information is safe if that's your hesitation in returning that census back. I'm going to share just some of the things that looking out, and I think because we're on video here, we can see. So when you are invited to do the census, you'll get like this blue form. This blue form, basically, it'll give you a census ID number with a code, and you go to my2020census.gov, you type in that code, and you can automatically start your questionnaire. That's the preferred method. It saves the census money because you don't have to process these forms. And then your information is just, put in automatically into their databases. If you do want to return the paper form, maybe you're not comfortable online or you don't have reliable internet access at your home, the Census Bureau by now should have mailed you a full form, which is, it looks like it's a lot of pages, but really it depends how many people are in your household, how long it's going to take you. So if you're just a person living by yourself, it's just the front and back. It's 9 questions, and they're all very simple. How many people live in your house? What is their relationship to the household? The main household person. What type of home you have. Do you own it or do you rent it? They want to know your phone number just in case they have questions to follow up with you. They want to know your name, your sex, your age, your race, and then your ethnic origin. And for a lot of those questions, really, there's no wrong way to answer. Because it's how you self-identify in terms of ethnicity or race. It's not something, nobody's going to go and double check that. It's just however you identify. So like you say, it's 9 questions for one person, and then the questions kind of repeat depending on how many people you have in your household. So it's fairly straightforward. You can get it done in less than 10 minutes if you're living by yourself or with a couple. So it shouldn't be a big deal, and it's not really a big ask for once every 10 years. So hopefully everybody takes the extra time to do that, especially now that we're all kind of stuck at home looking for things to do, right? There's only so much Netflix you can watch, right? So the other thing I wanted to mention, and if you want to share with the audience there, is that we have a county website that has a lot of this information. Maybe the thing you can do is just play that. There's a little like YouTube video, like a 2-minute video that maybe we could play. Just kind of gets back at what I've been saying.
What is the 2020 census? Every 10 years, the census records everyone living in this country. It's written in the Constitution and comes in a questionnaire that counts everyone who lives at your address on April 1st. The data can be used to inform funding for services like fire stations, schools, clinics, and representation that affect your community.
How will 2020 census data be used? Where there are more people, there are more needs for public services. That's why the census is used by the government to inform funding decisions each year. But that's not all. It's also used by nonprofits to inform services, by businesses to create jobs, and even by students for school projects. Understanding how the population changes helps us shape communities across the country for the better.
How does the 2020 census affect representation? There are 435 seats in the House of Representatives. These get distributed to the 50 states by population, and an accurate census response helps your state get the right amount of seats. States with smaller populations get at least one, while states with larger populations might get more.
How do I take the 2020 census? In March 2020, every address in the country will receive an invitation to complete a simple questionnaire, and there are 3 ways to respond. Number 1, do it online. Number 2, call by phone. Number 3, send it by mail. For those who don't respond, a census taker from your community will follow up and assist you.
Is my 2020 census data safe? After sending your census response, your personal information is kept safe. By law, it can't be shared with any other government agency, law enforcement, or landlord. No one. So take your 2020 census with peace of mind. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, the Census Bureau here also in that video talked about what happens if you don't return the census. So I wanted to get into that a little bit. So after all the reminders come through and after you ignore the paper form, basically what's going to happen, and as a result of COVID-19, this has been pushed back a little bit, about a month, is those census enumerators that come to your door. Obviously, in this time of social distancing, we want to minimize that as much as possible. And you can prevent someone coming to your house to enumerate you and keep yourself and those enumerators safe by returning that form. So that's critical. If for some reason you can't or don't, that enumerator will show up to your door. They'll come in. And they'll help you answer it, or they will fill it out for you right there at your door. One of the things, some people may be afraid, someone coming into the door, there are ways to identify these enumerators. They are going to be wearing teal shirts with a Census 2020 logo on them. They're like polo shirts. They will have a census bag. They will have a census ID. And likely they will have some sort of tablet to guide you. So that's how you can identify. They'll all be wearing the same thing. They're generally people that have been hired from your community. So they're not people coming in from, from downstate or something like that. They're usually your neighbors. That's what the Census Bureau tries to do. Tries to hire people in every community to serve as the census taker enumerator for that community. If you're comfortable doing it that way, you can wait. But like I said, we're trying to get people to self-enumerate, basically by filling out the census those ways that the video talked about. But yeah, that's one of the things that COVID-19 and this thing has kind of done is push back some of these self-imposed deadlines that the census had to to do the census for the census operations. So they extended the self-enumeration period out an extra month until the end of May, when the enumerators will start knocking on doors. And that's, obviously it's one of those things we have to do for social distancing. Then the actual count for the census will probably, it was due to have ended around July. That's end of July. That's when really the Census Bureau just gives up on trying to get the extra people counted. That's been extended into August now. So there'll still be time until probably mid-August or so to have the census numbers, as best as we can. And then we'll just have to live with those numbers for 10 years. And it's, when we say that, what I mean is that there is census estimates that are done in between those 10-year periods. And what happens is that we have to live with those numbers because that serves as the baseline for those estimates. So if that baseline is wrong, then all those projections beyond that are going to be, just as, you're going to build on to that error. So as an accountant, I'm sure you know that's the case. So you want to make sure that that base number that you're starting those projections from are as best as they can, and that helps the numbers, in the next, 9 years after that, to have, better estimates. So it helps us for 10 years. That's why it's really important. In the website, again, if you want to go back to that, I just wanted to touch base. What's nice this year, because we have an online response option, the census has come up with a website for us to keep track of how communities are doing responding to the census so far. And as the video said, the first forms were mailed out in March. So now we've had a couple months or a month and a half about of self-response rates going on. And from this map that is on our website, and the link is up at the top there if you'd like to visit it later, but it's also under the news, or if you just Google Genesee County, New York 2020 census, it's one of the top, 3 links up there. The United States as a whole is at about 54.6% in response rate. So that's pretty average about this time. Really, the extra 25% is always gathered by those enumerators. So if we can get it to about 75% as self-enumeration, we'll be in good shape. In New York is it's actually below average for the, than the national average. They're at about 48.8%. The governor has allocated about $30 million in this year's budget to do outreach for the census. And we were hoping as a county to receive some funding for that, to do a community outreach, basically get the word out about the census and encourage people to fill it out. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, that funding has kind of been held back. And we're hoping that it'll be released at some point, and we'll be able to do some events or things like that to try to get people to respond to the census, but that hasn't happened yet. So New York says 48.8%. Hopefully that'll go up once that funding gets released. And then Genesee County as a whole, we're about 53.8%. So we're doing better than New York, and just about the same, a little less than a percentage behind the national average. So that's good. I'm encouraged by those numbers. And the map here that Matt has up is basically the county by town and their response rates. So if you're interested in that, the map's a little clunky, but if you scroll over or pan over, you're able to kind of select different geographies to get response rates. We put the towns up just so it'd be easier to see. Oh, it reverted, it refreshed back, but it's okay. And this is how it will look when you first refresh the map. It's basically by census tract, and it shows you basically what the county, how the county is performing. The darker the blue, the better. The orange numbers are basically under 50%. So those are the areas we're focusing in as a county. Looks like the town of Batavia, north of the Thruway, is at like 50%. some of the wards in the city. Ward number 2, which is that center portion around Oak Street, is 43.5%. So that's the lowest. Then there's the 5th ward, which is south of Route 5 on the west side of the city. That's at 43.6, just behind the 2nd ward. And then the 6th ward, the other south side ward, is at 46%. Those are really the 3 census tracts that need the most attention. When you do switch over to the towns that need more attention in terms that they're lower than our county average are the towns of Byron and Stafford. And Stafford is at 42.8%, which is the lowest out of all the geographies we have here reporting. Anecdotally, what we found out is we think it's happening in Stafford and Byron is that a lot of the people in those municipalities have post office boxes, and that tends to create an undercount because basically the Census Bureau mails one out to every household by address, right? They don't know people's post office boxes numbers. They don't deliver directly to post office boxes. So then all the mail basically gets sent to that one post office. And then whoever's working at that post office, that the mail carrier or the sorter has to basically guess and then use the information they have to figure out which municipality or which address goes to with which PO box. If they don't have that information readily available, it may be a hard task to do. So you can see those 2 towns in orange there, Stafford and Byron. That's what we think it's probably happening, why they're so under. Especially if you look at Byron, it's not that much different than Virgin, and Virgin has one of the highest percentages in our county. So it's an interesting thing to see. In terms of the communities that are working or doing really well, Darien is the highest at 65%. So that's really well. I'm really proud of them. That's better than the national and the county and state average. And then Bethany is right behind them at 64.8%. And that's even more impressive because Bethany doesn't have the best internet connectivity in the county. So even though you can see that 55% of the people out of the have responded via the internet there. We can see those numbers start to creep up then as people start returning the paper forms. Those paper forms take a little longer to process at the Census Bureau. So those numbers, there's sort of a lag between the response when someone fills it out in paper and when it shows up in this map. So I showed, you can see which areas are performing well, which areas we need to kind of pay more attention. If you, and what we're asking everybody, if you have relatives, you have friends in these areas that need more attention, or just in general, as you do Zoom meetings or phone calls or whatever you can at this point, encourage them to fill out the census if they haven't already. Maybe you want to ask them, and if they have questions about it, hopefully this video has kind of given you some talking points to convince them that it's safe and it's important. So that's all I have, Matt. I don't know, unless you have any other questions, but there's definitely a lot of information there for everyone to
Yes, Felipe, you covered a ton of information. That's great. It's good to see that despite the pandemic, there's still order and logic in the process. That all to this date that has been done is to move the dates back a little bit. That there's still a plan to ensure that we get everyone counted. You listed an exhaustive list of all the benefits for Genesee County taxpayers and citizens to have it counted. And even though I've heard the speech a couple times, it's still really eye-opening to see the importance of having this information. And at the end of the day, it's not a tall lift. It's not a big ask that we're asking for the people to do. We're asking them to answer 9 questions. I know my wife Melissa took care of that for us. We did the old-fashioned way. We mailed it in. We didn't go on the internet, but we took care of that in our household. And we hope that after seeing this and hopefully or any other way they've learned that the people understand the importance of this, and that they'll get out and go on the internet and file it or call or send their mail form in. But Again, Felipe, I want to appreciate or say thanks for taking the time to deliver this information. I'm sure over the next coming months you'll be giving many more of these presentations and beating the drum and doing a great job for us. I appreciate it. This has a significant impact on the community, and we're lucky here in Genesee County that you're leading the effort for this.
Thanks. Appreciate it.